Good morning. Welcome to session 4C. The title of this session is The Visual Rehabilitation Adapted to People with Dual Sensory Impairment. And we have two speakers today. The first one is Marie-Yves Gagné. Marie-Yves Gagné is a specialist in visual impairment rehabilitation for over 15 years. She works at the Institut Nazareth at Louis Braille, CISSS de la Montérégie. Forgive my, no, perfect, okay, thank you. For over 12 years. Over the years, she has developed a specialty in computer communication, and for the past 3 years, has been working for deafblindness with a joint program for deafblind. She has a keen interest in the development of visual skills. She is the new facilitator of the deafblindness community of practice.
Give the microphone, Tara.
And her partner
Okay.
in this presentation is Suzanne Trudeau. She has been a specialized educator for over 20 years at the Institut Raymond Diwa.
Good morning, everyone.
She has held a special education diploma at TES since 1997. She has been working with people with dual sensory impairments for over 20 years. She has expertise in langue design québécois, or LSQ, and has mastered tactile LSQ. She is a CODA, a child of a deaf adult, and has a strong and rich experience of living with the deaf community and its culture. Please welcome Sophia and Marie. Suzanne, my apologies.
Information about what's going on in the room, or if I missed something.
I will just start. I'm nervous, so it said, okay. So hi, thanks for coming. We are happy to do our presentation in a different way. We don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but a video. It represents and reflects the spirit and unique way of working within our deafblindness team. We have been a joint program since 2005. Wait, 2005. And we are two rehabilitation centers, one for the blind needs and one for the one for the visual needs and one for people for hearings need, and this is in Montreal. By combining the expertise on visual and hearing issues, we are able to offer better services to our customers with specific needs.
Hi. This presentation focuses on visual intervention in deafblindness, so we won't cover modes of communication that don't require vision. The presentation will be divided into 3 parts: lighting, assessment, and visual training. We aim to illustrate why and how we need to adapt our interventions to our dual impaired clients. So, let's see the movie.
I'm adjusting the microphone up a little bit. So this is Megan. So first of all, just to let you know what's not on the slide.
Hi, this is my Greek colleague, Suzanne Trudeau, a bubbly brunette with curly hair and really cool glasses. She's a specialized educator who has worked in the field of deafblindness for over 20 years. She's also a senior interpreter for almost 20 years. LSQ is her mother tongue, as she's a CODA, child of deaf adult. So she's very familiar with deaf culture in Quebec.
Hello, this is my talented colleague Marie-Yves Gagné, a calm and composed person with short hair that has a little something funky about it. She has a long background adapting computing and has been working with visually impaired people for over 15 years. She joined the deafblind team 3 years ago. As you have probably heard, we work in Montreal and practice in French. We'd like to thank you for your understanding of our very French way of expressing ourselves.
For over 15 years, Quebec has offered specific rehabilitation programs for people with visual and hearing impairments. The program is aimed at people with different levels of vision and hearing, so any combination is possible. From functional, visual, and hearing impairments to total blindness and deafness. Whatever the context, the objective is the same: to develop and maintain autonomy. Success is ideally achieved by the end of our interventions because our client is autonomous.
The joint deafblindness team is composed of several specialists with different areas of expertise: ideology, orientation and mobility specialists, specialized educators, occupational therapists, social workers, psychologists, optometrists, and so on. My job within the deafblindness team is to develop the person's autonomy in all spheres of life. My mandate also consists of assisting other caregivers in their interventions and supporting communication. As a CODA, I make the wider environment aware of clients' differences and how to approach them appropriately.
I'm a specialist in low vision rehabilitation. I work with people with diverse ages and needs. In my job, I'm involved in all aspects of visual rehabilitation. I focus on functional vision rehabilitation and adapted computer communication. Anything that can improve functional vision, like functional vision assessment, training in the use of visual aids, lighting assessment and recommendation for modification, and finally, visual training. Before I started working with deafblind clients, I've often heard the argument, why would they need specialized services for deafblindness? If they have services for both hearing and visual impairments, I was often told that the clientele was similar to those who were only visually impaired.
Is it really the same?
Really not. You're right. I can't simply reproduce my practice as before. Communication needs are more important and complex. Working on visual impairment without taking hearing impairments into account doesn't allow me to intervene in the best possible way.
As you know, communication is the basis of all interventions. Imagine for someone who communicates in sign language.
This presentation is a summary of our reflections on how to better adapt our practice to deafblind clients. Here is some of our reflections and the improvements we have introduced to our practice.
Seeing is hearing. Sign language is a visual language. All our deafblind clients experience communication difficulties. It is unique to each individual and must be adapted to his or her sensory condition.
It's important to work with visual potential to achieve the clearest communication. Information must be clearly perceived in order to be properly interpreted.
Many ways of communication are possible. Sign language, the presence of an interpreter, written communication, lip reading, natural gestures, and nonverbal cues.
All these modes of communication require the use of vision, which is why it's so important to work on functional vision to get the most out of it.
And then I had a couple of one-on-one interviews
Ideal lighting makes easier communication. It can make all the difference to compensate for loss of vision contrast, reduce glare, and achieve optimal visual functioning. Lighting plays an important role in communication, helping messages to be better interpreted and understood. Here are a few examples where communication and lighting issues take on a different dimension. I'd like to introduce you to some of the clients I've met over the years.
Mr. Cote, who has retinitis pigmentosa following his last vision loss, now uses the LSQT, Tactile Quebec Sign Language. It's still new to him, and he sometimes has difficulty understanding the message. When he misunderstands something or is unsure of the message, he places the interlocutor's hand under optimal lighting to make sure he understands better.
So, it's important for him to have optimal lighting in terms of Kelvin degrees and lux levels in all living areas, bedroom, kitchen table, living room, and so on.
Emma is a young teenager with Usher syndrome. She has 2 hearing aids. She's in a class with other young people with hearing loss. She uses her hearing and lip reading to access the transmitted message. She has difficulties with lighting. In addition to night blindness, she's easily dazzled, needs lighting, but it can also bother her. Reflections on the electronic board and regular chalkboard cause her problem.
To help, we switch off some of the neon lights in classroom to limit glare and reflections, but without affecting the rest of the class. Add neon filters to make lip reading easier when the teacher is explaining, and ask the teacher to stay in the same place all the time. She particularly enjoys reading. The use of a pre-reader to adjust font, backlighting, and the distance between lines help her a lot. Using a light with good color rendering help to limit glare.
Will is a teenager who lives with implants and uses cute speech in class to access the message. With COVID, the situation became complex. The interpreter has to stand behind plexiglass. Managing reflections, therefore, became a key issue.
In this case, we deactivate some neon lights. We use curtains to control natural light. Adding a rechargeable lamp directly on the work desk allow him to better see his textbooks as the classroom was darker.
Mr. Saint Laurent has gone deaf at the age of 70. He uses lip reading. Sometimes the message has to be written down to make it easier to understand. This worked perfectly until the appearance of macular degeneration, at which point lip reading became virtually impossible.
In this case, we adjust lighting to allow effective reading on the whiteboard. We switch to e-reading so he can do his favorite hobby.
So in general, again, we had also low vision and blind participants.
We therefore suggest finding the optimum lighting quality in terms of color temperature, intensity, and color rendering. Smart lights is a great alternative, but the applications or controllers must be accessible. Dimmable light improves comfort for the whole family and offers greater versatility as visual pathologies evolve. Avoid reflection and glare, work with contrast, take into account shadows, positioning, and working distance. It is possible to mark out certain elements of the environment with light, such as corridors, entrances, and columns. Always pay a particular attention to the client's mode of communication and where they interact.
Next slide.
Conclusion. Audio description preferences
In vision rehabilitation, we pay particular attention to lighting to help with activities of daily living and reading. With our deaf-blind clientele, we also aim to improve communication through lighting. Having visual access to as much information as possible helps us to better understand the context, so comprehension is maximized. Indeed, communication is more effective if there is good access to visual cues. We must therefore ensure that we always have a place where lighting makes communication possible and effective.
From there, you can link to our research page, and there is the description of the audio description project on there.
In visual rehabilitation, we try to find the impact of scotomas or defects in the visual field. To do this, we use reading charts.
What are these used for?
These enable us to observe if a good return to line is made, if the reading of the line is complete, and to observe whether certain places on the line are more difficult to read. We also see if word length has an impact on reading.
Can you find the information with the regular charts?
Nope, it's simply not adapted to the need of our patients, who use sign language. The sentences in the charts are far too complex.
For the last century in Quebec, the approach to teaching the deaf has changed, which explains the differences in understanding of written French in the community. In order to make a good evaluation, we created a new tool to replace the charters usually used. We want our tool to be not insulting, not infantilizing, and results not influenced by users' level of French.
We selected French sentences as close as possible to LSQ syntax. We choose concrete vocabulary. We want the meaning of words or signs to be the same in both languages, to limit the number of concepts in each sentences, and to ensure that conceptual reference and words function in both cultures.
Obviously, in creating this tool, it was essential to work with the deaf community.
Our optometrist colleague also give us good advice. So far, the tool is being used by few professionals. Feedback has been positive from professionals and patients alike. The desired information is obtained. Not perfect, but a very good compromise for obtaining the desired information.
Everybody does have different preferences, and that was important to know. That sometimes you have to
Indeed.
find a
Sorry.
happy
The education of deaf people in Quebec has changed a lot over the years. Not only was sign language not recognized, but it was also a subject of shame in educational institutions for the deaf. LSQ was seen as an obstacle to integration into society. Initially, there was a strong tendency to use oral and written French grammar. Changes were made during the years, insisting on signs representing French without considering the comprehensions of the message. Then, finally, recognition of LSQ as a language of instruction, brought out the ease of understanding written French. Society understood the importance of having a well-established language before being able to learn a second language. This explains the differences in understanding of written French among our clientele, who come from all ages and generations. We use our knowledge of deaf culture when creating the chart, so that the phrases would be easily understood by clients. As CODA, I have always taken into consideration the differences between hearing and deaf culture. Several deaf people help us to ensure that the sentences flowed smoothly. However, nothing is perfect. A little anecdote. Our optometrist used the adapted chart with an LSQ deaf person during his visual assessment. An interpreter was present. In the chart, one sentence is, Hélène drinks a coffee in the metro. The metro is the subway in Quebec, but it's also a chain of grocery stores. So the deaf person sang the following sentences. Hélène drinks coffee in the grocery store. It made us laugh, but showed us that no matter how hard you try, it's always going to be a work in progress.
Level 3 is not enough because I'm a researcher, so we have to make our studies. So a bit of background.
Once we have identified the difficulties, we can do visual training to improve visual skills, to facilitate reading and communication.
What is visual training for you?
If they are assessed as
The classic approach is to work on eccentric vision. We can also focus on specific skills such as positioning, stability, saccades, tracking, scanning, and visual discrimination.
in England they
It's different to coach someone who is deafblind. It's impossible to use oral instructions. The eyes have to leave the task to go and get the message. It takes a lot of preparations, and we have to plan a lot of extra training sessions.
Do you think working with a regular interpreter will be helpful?
Yes and no. Often, concepts are difficult to pass on. Translations lack nuance due to the language barrier. The more intermediaries, the more complex the message.
It was after my unsuccessful attempts that we took up the situation together. We believe that visual training should be effective and motivating.
We need to be sure that the concepts are well understood and that we can refer to them easily.
We ask ourselves a lot of questions like, should we adapt LSQ signs and inform the interpreter? Should we always use the same interpreter? Should we create a bank of signs for the different interpreting services?
We thought about it and realized that the concepts are too complex to adapt LSQ signs. Signs are too context dependent.
In our reality, always having the same interpreter is almost impossible. So why don't we work together to facilitate communication and create continuity?
Obviously, we conclude that the best way to achieve effective visual training is to combine the expertise of a specialized educator familiar with deaf culture and the different modes of communication with a visual rehabilitation practitioner. Marie-Ève, remind us what is the utility of eccentric vision training.
If you have a scotoma, eccentric vision training helps you make better use of your vision.
Do you think it can help with communication?
Yes, in addition to improving reading function, it also helps with communication through writing, better reception of the sign language message, better perception of nonverbal cues, better lip reading.
Doing the training together takes a lot of planning. I have to understand the concepts well to express them simply.
Yes, it's much more complex than with our hearing person. By working together, we are now able to produce effective visual training.
On the other hand, we need to think about the next generation and how we can pass on what we have built.
My questions about visual training and deafblindness result from two interventions I made when I started working with deafblind clients. They helped me see issues I never thought about before. First, I did a visual training with a user who had become completely deaf, so she communicated orally but received the message by lip reading and writing. She later developed macular degeneration. Lip reading and reading in general became difficult for her. So we did eccentric vision training with her, which enabled her to maintain her reading habits. The intervention were carried out in writing only. It was the time we got a face mask. and we found that it's impossible to add information without stopping the task, moving the eyes, making the communication, and then resuming the task. It's difficult when we're working on visual skills. This makes the process long and complex. After that, I did a vision awareness training for deaf and hearing teachers who work in LSQ. For this meeting, I took advantage of the presence of an interpreter. Simple explanations were given on the effects of reduced visual acuity and contrast sensitivity. The question I was asked afterward made me realize that the information had been badly understood or transmitted. Concepts got mixed up. Although I rephrased what I said, the interpretation remained the same. Following these experiences, I really began to wonder how I was going to succeed in visual training in this way. This is why we have reviewed our intervention techniques.
We'd like to sincerely thank our colleague Louis Saint-Pierre, who filmed our interventions with Monsieur La Sablonnière like a pro. In addition, he worked many hours on the video editing, giving a very professional and lively finish to our work. Without him, there would have been no video. Thanks again, Louis.
We also like to thank Monsieur La Sablonnière. It was the person you see in the video, once again for his incredible generosity and active participation to his rehabilitation. Working with him was a pleasure. So thank you all for your interest for the subject.
Meets the person and then comes back and says, I'm not sure enough to do this. It's more complicated than I thought. So then the decision changes and we send someone else.
We have about 15 minutes for questions, so both Marie-Eve and Suzanne have been so... thank you. Okay, I'll bring the mic to you.
Do we need to get out to see this person
We got one
quickly
question, yay!
or not? Because we can't wait for somebody with the relevant qualifications.
Hello, my name is Siri. I come from Norway. It was a very informative film that you had, and I was like, everything was important. I don't have a question. It's just a big thank you for the film, and I hope that it's possible to I don't know if we could get the film or the transcription, maybe.
I'm gonna do a bit of, I don't know. At the end of Marie-Ève Gagné, you got animatrice de la communauté de pratique en société. It's a small community of practice for the blindness.
Yeah.
So I'm the new facilitator. So if you want to join us, you can have access to a lot of information, and we do also some workshops between some partnerships. So we work with France, Ontario, United States. So, but everybody in deafblind field is welcome. So maybe it's the easier way to share.
Yeah.
But we can also join us with our email.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
going to be a pleasure for us.
And of course, established practice. It would be wrong of me to suggest it was a case of, well, this is what we've always done. But there were certain patterns in the way that certain people.
Hello, my name is Tura. I'm also from Norway. It's the Norwegian Scandinavian table. I also like the movie, and I think it would contribute to the visual field. I especially like the point you made on how vision is the key sense to sign language, and the complication when you cannot, number one, do instructions at the same time. Number one was that. Number two is the reading difference between a written language and sign language. Very, very important. And the third was all the different lightings. And that's my question. Is in Canada, do you get support to do light fixings? Because in Norway, it's changed over the years, and it's really expensive, and the helping aid organization won't give it anymore. So it's down prioritized because people can't afford good lightings, and schools don't understand why they should have different kind of lightings. Why is yellow light bad for you and good for you? And yeah, so the lighting was the question. How do you fix that?
We can talk a lot about the lighting, but that if we have a lot of hours, we can talk a lot about that. But in Quebec, that's the people like me with my job. We're doing the lighting assessment and recommendation for modification, like I said before. But for the money, it's a bit different. It's a bit harder. So if I work in a school, I have to do a big report of why it's so important, and what's going to be help and a lot of things like that. And after the school, I have to decide if they pay for that. So surely in school, what I used to do as a recommendation, don't need an electrician because it's always refused. So I try to add something different to have the same result. And another way, if I work in a workspace with somebody's working, that's the company, they have to pay. But if I work in a home and I do a plan for a home, it's a bit different. It's the same thing if the person I have 4 years old, 98 years old, we can have a budget. It's like Quebec government gave a budget, give money to cities, and the city, the city don't have the knowledge for doing modification. It's work for wheelchair and deafblindness and all. It's in the same budget. Is it a real word in English? Okay, good. Sorry. But it has to be due by a community health center, and we don't work with them. But we work with them sometimes, but not really. So the project has to be managed by occupational therapists there, but who don't know their blindness. So I'm there, I'm doing the job, I'm doing the plan, I'm doing the recommendation, and after that I pray. That's work, because a lot of things, and the budget is, we can have a renewal, you can have a new one for the same person for the home at each 7 years. So what we do there have to work a long time. So now we have like smart lighting, and we work more with that because we can modify them easier in the time. So we think about the future when we do it. So we try to do it for now, but we can add something or change things. So, but it's really difficult. And the healthcare system from Quebec give one lamp for all the life. So if I give a lamp for, I don't know, a kid who is 4, when he, I don't know, playing with our small thing, it's one time, it's done. I can do it again. So, but I can work with school and get it from school sometimes. So I stop because I can talk about it all day. It's very important topics for me.
How does that work? We don't know. Okay. And finally, if the 3 aspects of complexity that we identified, communication, change, and different factors.
And so if they're on the DSP, they're with social development. So we go in and do an assessment because we deliver services directly to the clients. We can go in, and if we need a light or something adapted to that person's environment, then we just fill out the recs and send it in social development. 99% of the times they'll support what we need to support that individual in the home. So it's a little different in New Brunswick. We have a little bit better access to support, like money for supports for individuals. Now, if it was in a school, then I'm assuming they'd probably have to go through the same. I have an educator beside me here, so in the school I would assume they'd have to fill out a mountain and a half of paperwork and cross their fingers as well. But for us with direct service, pretty much everything under social development, they support any adaptations we need to do for the client in their homes.
You're really lucky.
Thank you, Peter, and we have time for
this will be the last question.
Questions before we wrap up.
Great presentation. So I'm wondering, for vision rehabilitation, have you ever done it with somebody who doesn't have functional communication? So I'm thinking more like congenital, maybe that they don't use sign language. Would that still be affected? And is there a way to present that to somebody?
Do you talk about visual training? No. You could talk about yeah, okay. No, I didn't do it, but my colleague, they got a poster over there that, working on that. Because in Quebec it's a bit complicated, and they choose, and I think it's a real good idea to work together. So they define objective and work together. So they're gonna work first on fixation, and when they got fixation, they can add something more. And I don't work with them because because that's not my job right now. But they do. Joanne Fix do the same job as me, and she's over there, and she do it with a occupational therapist and an speech therapist. So they work together and work in the same time on the 3 spheres, so communication and visual skills.
So
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's Joanne Fix and Josie and Danielle.
Lovely presentations.
Yeah, over there.
We do have time for one more question.
Not only it highlights the importance of knowledge.
Okay.
I'm really happy a lot of people have interest in that. I was not sure.
At different levels.
We got a question.
When you meet someone,
I'm going to be your last question. I'm Emma Boswell. I'm from England, United Kingdom. I work with adults who have Usher syndrome and head up a service across the country. That's part of an organisation called CIUSSS. Now, I suppose that's the preface. Your presentation was brilliant. I enjoyed watching all of it. And my question is around the clients you work with, and have you measured the effect on well-being, confidence and esteem before assessment and after assessment, and any thoughts you might have on that, please? On your clients and well-being and esteem, whether you've been able to measure it and assess differences.
It's not measure with a questionnaire or something. They're really organized. But we always have a big intervention plan. Let's continue. Okay, you got a big intervention plan, and that working with that to know if the intervention, not if it's the objective is realized. Yeah, we look at that, but the first thing we look in the intervention plan is if the person is satisfied, if they see the gain, if what we did what they need. So in this we ask, in this objective we did that we you were you agree to da. We did da. So now how you feel about that? So we ask that before seeing it's really work. I don't know how to explain it. I think it's really a Quebecer way to see rehabilitation. So sure.
I'm not as better as she in English, but all the deaf-blind people don't have the same objective. Some deaf-blind people doesn't read a book or a journal, a paper, and some yes. So the objective is the same, but the results is the person that said yes, I'm okay with that. Either if it's not the optimal, but he is satisfying of the objective response.
Okay. Thank you, Marie, Eve, and Suzanne. Would you say it's a great session, Jess?